What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. So recently Riot have actually hinted that it's possible that Aurelion Sol is going to be receiving sort of like a mini rework later on down the year. You know, not like a full redesign, not a full-on straight-up rework, more of like a mini rework, kind of like what happened to Shyvana. You know, some changes to maybe a couple abilities, mostly with the purpose of fixing a lot of the glaring issues around his gameplay. And the key problem is that they haven't actually mentioned entirely what they plan on changing about Aurelion Sol. So in terms of the specifics, it is kind of speculation at this point so far, but we thought it'd be a pretty cool chance to talk about the state of Aurelion Sol in general and what Riot could maybe do to try and fix him up a bit. And so if you guys enjoyed the video, definitely hit that like button, and if you don't enjoy the video, feel free to hit that dislike button too. So we first heard about Riot's displeasure with Aurelion Sol through a post from Riot Axes, and he was quick to clarify that the changes are not going to be a full-blown rework, as we mentioned. And so it sounds like Riot does have a few core problems with Aurelion Sol that they would rather clean up now, rather than kind of leave as issues until he's old enough to merit a full-on major rework though. And so the first of those issues that they want to address is going to be making him a little bit less skill intensive. You know, being good with Aurelion Sol is actually quite difficult right now because he just plays out so differently to the other mages, especially in terms of his mechanics. And although Riot have said he'll probably still have a significant learning curve, they do want to make him at least a little bit more accessible for players that are trying to play him for the first time. Now the next problem and the next focus point for his upcoming mini rework is that his spells aren't exactly that satisfying to use, and his matchups are all about hard counters. You know, there's not really any times where Aurelion Sol has a very even skill-based matchup, you know. He either completely dominates the laning phase, or he kind of just gets wrecked and can't really do all that much, which probably means that he'll get a couple of tweaks that alter some of his spells to maybe make them less difficult to use, or maybe less difficult to play around actually. But the problem is that most of his power lies on his passive and his W, and changing that is of course going to really mess up his core design, you know, his core thematics, and really just his whole theme as a character, honestly. So to figure out what Riot should be focusing on with their revisit to Aurelion Sol, you know, the best place to start is definitely going to be looking at how he's functioning in the current meta right now. Now, that's actually kind of a difficult thing to do since it's tricky to be able to judge him by his win rate, since his play rate's actually really low, since at the moment, you know, the Aurelion Sol hype that was generated from the World Championship kind of like fizzled out and has really dropped quite a lot. So the only people that are still busting out the dragon are the people who are really familiar with him, you know, those Aurelion Sol mains, those one-trick players as well. And on top of that, Aurelion Sol's main counters were the Assassin champions, and thanks to the latest Assassin reworks, they're often either banned, they're just not played all that well because they're kind of new champions, and honestly overall the Assassin rework in general was kind of just a nerf across the board to pretty much every Assassin champion, and that makes it pretty hard to gauge the state that Aurelion Sol is actually in right now for the average player. So we kind of have to look at things a little bit more subjectively. You know, for the experienced player, Aurelion Sol offers a lot actually. He's got AoE hard crowd control rather than like the typical, you know, single target stuff, 2 AoE hard crowd control abilities actually. He's got really high sustain damage. He's actually got some pretty reasonable bursts too once you hit level 6 with your ultimate, and he honestly also has some of the best wave clear and roaming power of any mage in the game, and that's a lot to deal with for certain matchups, and it's an awesome skill set, and it's one of the reasons that he's kind of pretty matchup dependent actually. You know, if you want to survive the lane, you need to either be able to kill him early on or at least match his wave clear, which means you can play poke mages, wave clear mages, or really just assassins. But the problem is that if Aurelion Sol's in a lane where he can't just win a straight up fight, he can still wave clear essentially for free without ever spending any mana, while you as the opponent have to burn through a bunch of resources to keep up with him, and then he can kind of just roam to other lanes and pressure the map, which leaves you to either try and shove the wave back in on him or chase him down. So really your only window is to try to get a big advantage early in the game, exploit his potential weaknesses in the early game. You know, he definitely does have a very major weakness though, and that is that once you're actually on top of him, there's honestly not really all that much he can do, since pretty much every ability that he has a minimum range to it. You know, his passive has a minimum range, even his Q has a minimum range too. Once you're inside the passive orbit, he's never going to be able to damage you aside from auto attacks. His Q can't be instantly detonated since there's that minimum range again, so if you stay on top of him, if you're maybe a melee champion that can gap close, or honestly even just a ranged champion that can gap close too. You can win a trade like super reliably unless he does have his ultimate to knock you back, and this is definitely a really big weakness of Aurelion Sol for sure, but it's a weakness that not every champion can take advantage of, and it makes sense that he has such varied power if he really has that big of a drawback. The problem really here is that it just makes him super polarizing. Either he ends up being in a really good matchup and you can do well since you have so many options, or you're just in a bad matchup and you kind of just lose out. Aurelion Sol can definitely be pretty well summed up in terms of really clear strengths and weaknesses, which is a great thing for balance actually, but it can make a champion somewhat unsatisfying to play actually. He has insane wave clear and harass with his passive and his W, which is definitely what makes him such a strong presence in lane. That can also make a ton of other champions kind of obsolete, and on top of that he also has the roaming power from his E so that he can snowball other lanes to push an advantage, or he could just use it to stay in lane forever without being punished, but at the same time his downsides are clear as well. Once again, if you get on top of him, he's just screwed, which means that you've kind of got no way to peel for yourself when the enemy's already in close range, so you have to just kind of run away and hope you can survive. So another really frustrating problem that people have with Aurelion Sol is that he's just so dependent on his W to deal damage, and that's an ability that's just really easy to mess with. Being hit with hard crowd control first off disables his W completely and puts it on cooldown, so his passive shrinks back to the smaller size and he deals way less damage, and with the W on cooldown your primary source of damage is just gone for 4 seconds, so you are useless whether you're in a team fight or in a 1v1 scenario. Now, crowd control effects are meant to make you easier to kill, of course, but Aurelion Sol gets really heavily punished when he's hit with CC because he doesn't really have that much raw damage outside of his W toggle, and it's so hindering to that actual ability. So the real question is, at the end of the day, how do you fix those issues without totally changing how he completely plays as a champion, right? And a lot of people seem to think that maybe one of the solutions is to potentially rework his roaming tool, Comet of Legend. Now, this roaming tool allows him to snowball games pretty early on actually. It's definitely a really powerful ability in the right hands. It's something that lets you control the entire game, help win the side lanes for your team, also gives him a quick way to get back to lane from the base. It potentially can make him really hard to punish in lane if the Aurelion Sol player sort of has a good understanding of the champion, because even if you have a favorable matchup, Comet of Legend gives Aurelion Sol a way to just avoid the laning phase by pressuring the rest of the map and just recalling and getting back to lane without losing CS or doing stuff like that. Now, not being able to keep a champion down after you counterpick and outplay them is not necessarily all that healthy, and it's something that makes people really frustrated when they play against him. So the issue here is that Comet of Legend is equally as defining to Aurelion Sol's design as his Center of the Universe passive, really. So messing with too much with either of them kind of just turns him into another standard mage, honestly. Now, what Riot probably need to focus on is making changes to his abilities that take away the dependence on matchups. Both the matchups that he's super favored in and the ones that he has a hard time in, to make it so that he's a lot less of a polarizing champion, So with that in mind, it's possible that the best thing to change would maybe be his passive and his W. The reason why people have such a hard time dealing with Aurelion Sol in the first place is because he can harass so easily with his W, it's really difficult to avoid. So dialing down his early game aggression might actually help make the lanes a little bit more even or something like that. Now, that would probably just make him flat out weaker though, so you'd also need to buff him a little bit in order to give him a chance to survive in lanes against his hard counters as well. Now, the best solution here is maybe something that could happen in 2 parts, so an update to his Q and an update to his W. So first off, there should probably be some kind of cooldown reduction on his W if it's toggled off by an enemy crowd control effect rather than by the Aurelion Sol player yourself. You're already super vulnerable when you get hit by CC, but essentially being unable to fight for 4 seconds after it really sucks. So making that a little bit more forgiving could be pretty awesome. And Aurelion Sol also, it would be nice to have some way to defend against hard counters that can dive on top of him. The champions like Fizz, Akali, the assassin sort of guys. So a good change here would maybe be to remove the minimum range on his Q so that he can just instantly detonate it for the stun and be able to stun opponents that are in melee range. His self-peel is definitely super important, and outside of his ultimate, he just doesn't really have the ability to protect himself. And if Riot are going to make his presence in lane a little bit weaker, which they probably should and probably will have to do, they should definitely give him a chance to defend himself as well, and letting his Q do the job is quite fair because people who are experienced in the matchup are just going to wait until he's used his Q before they jump in anyway. It won't really change anything at the highest level of play, but these changes are going to make it way easier to play against or play with Aurelion Sol as a less experienced player, which is really the goal here with Riot's, this kind of mini rework thing that they're planning on doing. Now his W should still scale up to the same amount of damage, and Riot can always put a little bit more damage onto his ultimate as a way to keep him strong when he hits level 6, but overall it's likely that this is where Riot's focus is going to be once they took another look at his gameplay. Either way though, that's just about going to wrap things up for our thoughts on Aurelion Sol's potential rework. If any of you guys out there are actually Aurelion Sol mains, definitely share your thoughts in the comment section below. Let us know what you think Riot should maybe change with the dragon to make him a little bit more friendly for newer players and as well a little bit less matchup dependent. Either way though, looks like that's going to be it for me. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like, subscribe if you want. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.